appear as if they were going to be taken into custody, placed under arrest, more like just getting them off of this roadway. But it does appear like that is now clear. You're on Los Angeles Street, if I remember correctly. So it looks like the overpass is now cleared. Yeah. So tell us what you see behind you, how far back that goes, and whether police, you think, are going to kind of start sweeping to get people out of this general area away from the 101.
So let me show you two things that are important real quick, because I think to show you exactly where we are. Let's go over in this direction here, right? So we have the road that runs along the 101 as well. You see all those orange flashing lights, yellow flashing lights. I know obviously it's a little bit dark out here, but just to give you a sense, that's Aliso Street, right? We were there at 6 o'clock. People were blocking the intersection there, and we saw this huge swarm of LAPD kind of come up that street to try to dissipate the crowd. And guess what happens? You move the crowd from that location, they end up at another location. And because it's been so packed over here, they were able to essentially block this entire intersection here, and that's where they have been sitting for the last 5 or 10 minutes or so. If we turn back around real quick, you can see police, LAPD has gotten a good control on trying to block traffic. For the entirety of the afternoon we've been out here, these roads have been open to cars. Now, not to say cars are moving, or cars are moving particularly fast, but many of them were protesters, and you had some other people within the crowd trying to drive through. So people have been walking through, weaving their way through crowds. Now, it seems LAPD has gotten to the point where they have this crowd on this intersection here, and most of the streets in the immediate vicinity kind of shut off. Obviously, with the riot gear and with the officers here, there's a concern that there may be potentially arrest or confrontation. That has not happened. This has been peaceful. Obviously, they got on the 101 several times over the course of this afternoon. But at the moment, this crowd really just started gathering here in the last 15, 20 minutes. You see them having very lively conversations face-to-face with police. It's not escalated to this point, but obviously, this is the particular area we're keeping an eye on. And if you look up the street as well, these protesters go all the way up to the following street as well. So there's still easily hundreds, if not several thousand, still out here.
All right, Tim, we are hearing from CHP that they gave a dispersal order earlier this afternoon. Is that something that you possibly have heard on the ground that people are just ignoring? Or do you think it's possible that these protesters did not know they had been ordered to disperse?
So there's been kind of several different kind of bumps throughout the day, right? So the protest started earlier today. They got onto the 101 at one point, and there was essentially a line of CHP, a dozen cars, 25 cars that lined up, and all the protesters right at this intersection where we are. And I'll show you here behind me, because they're not here now, but I just want to give you a sense of where they were, right? Because they all walked down this on-ramp here initially, and they got onto the 101 right there. And when CHP came out here, there was a bit of a standoff, right? It took a good hour and a half where nobody moved. And then eventually, after that order came down, the people eventually worked their way back up the off-ramp itself onto these streets here. I'm going to walk you down a little bit to show you. I know the action's in the other direction where all the people are and LAPD is, but you're asking about a little bit earlier. So that dispersal happened when they were on the 101 itself, and you see what's happening here, because this is the road that they're not letting them down. This is where they initially went down, and you see with the police tape up here, even all the garbage on the ground from the people who were walking down there and protesting earlier today, they are not letting anyone, protesters, cars, otherwise go down this street. That's where it began, but then eventually when many of those people came up onto these streets in downtown, they were covering all the streets. They initially went to City Hall. They kind of went in the other direction as well. They've been all over the place. There's so many protesters out here that they're essentially on every street corner, or at least have been. Now the group is a little bit smaller, and they seem to have gathered on this corner here, Arcadia and Los Angeles Street, and that's where LAPD has kind of closed in on this group, and now essentially trying to disperse them, but this just happening in the last 5 or 10 minutes or so, so it's going to be a little time.
They're trying to do what they can to clear any room. We'll walk along with you, Tim. I think the northbound side of the 101 looks like it just had an escort and might be open. We had said it was open before, but I believe that was just clearing the cars that were trapped there. And the southbound side moving once again. Okay, so we can report here at 6:41 that the 101 freeway appears to be back open in both directions. So they've cleared that overpass of Los Angeles Street where Tim is on. And it looks like they're also trying to back some protesters away from those side streets, Aliso, which overlooks the 101 freeway on one side, and then Arcadia, which overlooks the freeway where you are pointing right now. And so we'll see if they continue to push those protesters back. I think from what we can tell, just it looks like things might have calmed down a little bit once police stepped in to kind of show where things were going, where protesters were allowed. They're not going to allow them to do this. Or we could see, as we've seen before, this group kind of regroup, reposition themselves, and find another way to get on the freeway. It's just a matter of seeing what this group does and what their motivations are and how motivated they are to continue this disruption.
Yeah, and one of the things we're hearing right now is all those horns that are honking from people that are riding on the freeway. So as those have been signs of possible support from cars that might entice them to want to stay out there longer as they're trying to get their message out there, and for the cars driving along the freeway that are kind of honking and encouraging them to stay, then that might increase the chances that they won't disperse as soon as they can.
Yeah, and we can see you from Air 7 at the top of your screen. There is Tim and our cameraman Will. This is Los Angeles Street overpass over the 101 freeway. A large group has gathered on Arcadia Street and Los Angeles Street overlooking the 101 freeway. And we have not heard any fireworks go off in the last few minutes. I say that knocking on wood, hoping that does not change. But Tim, what does it sound like from ground level of what's going on there?
Well, this all happened very quickly. In fact, after we talked to you guys at 6 o'clock, we were working our way back to our van, which is just on the other side of this crowd. We actually walked a long way around, following the initial crowd that marched along one street over from where we are and back to Los Angeles Street. And when we got here, that's when a handful of people found a kind of sneaky way to get on an on-ramp back onto the 101. And once that happened, it was kind of like a melee for a second, because everyone saw the people on the freeway, and then everyone was kind of running around trying to figure out, hey, they too get on the freeway. CHP shut that down quick. But what ended up happening was, as people were overlooking, like right from here, on folks who were on the freeway, this area right here on Los Angeles Street started to get pretty packed, because everyone was watching the folks on the freeway on this corner and on that corner. And then what happened is this entire intersection got packed with people because everyone was looking at the folks on the freeway. Those folks get kicked off the freeway, come up here, and that's why you have this kind of mix of this kind of lively crowd, as I've been calling it, from the last really 30 or 40 minutes of the folks who came up from the 101, saw LAPD out here, kind of was flipping them off, getting angry, yelling things at LAPD, and that's when you started to see even more officers come out here, including the tactical unit, and kind of creating this line to prevent them from going either on the freeway itself or blocking any more of these streets. This is, I mean, you could see better from Air 7, but this is easily 10, 15 people deep here, and it goes all the way up the street. On the front lines, they're holding signs, they are exchanging a few words here and there, but again, this is kind of the same vibe it was 5, 6 o'clock this evening as they were protesting and walking through the streets. It's just now LAPD has kind of closed in and made the area where they're hanging out a little bit smaller. And obviously, at the moment, it's quiet, but who knows how long it's going to last. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people still out here.
For sure, Tim. You've been calling it a lively crowd, and as you've mentioned, you've been out there for us all afternoon kind of covering this. Do you think some of the people that we're seeing were not originally part of this protest and have kind of just joined in? And is that contributing to what we're seeing?
I can't tell you if it's a new crop of folks that came in that have a different mentality. I can tell you there were a lot of cars trying to get in, trying to park, trying to join the protest throughout the course of the afternoon. These folks are no more lively than they were earlier today. I'm using that word because I feel like that's a kind way to say a non-violent protest that is obviously full of passion, full of heart, and full of true deep meaning for the people who have come out here, some of them for the entirety of the day, 6, 7 hours out here protesting. Many of these folks, and I've seen some of them from earlier today, from a couple hours ago, they've just been out here for hours. And I think maybe it's the police kind of pushing in a little bit. Everyone's, nerves go up a little bit, but obviously this crowd, they've been setting off fireworks, they've been blowing the horns, they've been waving the flags, they've been blowing the whistles and everything. That's been a constant, essentially, through the course of the day. It's now a little bit more compact, so it seems a little bit more intense, but we've seen this through the course of the afternoon.
All right, great points that you're making there. I mean, they want to get their message out there, and they are certainly doing it. I mean, we're able to see, some of the signs that are there, which are using some very strong language, some four-letter words to express their feeling toward the Trump administration and towards these, deportations that we've seen in the past couple weeks or so. So they're making their voices heard. We see this young lady here, dancing, and she has a Mexican flag with her. So, they are passionate, as you said, and they want to get that message out there.
And this has not been isolated to Los Angeles. This was a nationwide movement today, just looking around the country to see where this has been happening. We're looking at Atlanta, Charlotte, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, San Jose, St. Louis, Seattle, Houston, most major cities in the United States and some smaller ones. Idaho Falls here held a protest this weekend. This is happening nationwide in response to President Trump's administration and his handling of deportations of those here in this country illegally. We know that it was a campaign promise. He said day one, he's signing an executive order and will begin deportations on Inauguration Day. January 20th, they began in cities, including here in Los Angeles. But what has happened is instead of getting rid of violent offenders who are in this country illegally, those who have done nothing wrong other than entering this country illegally or overstaying their visa, those who do not have permission to be here right now are also being swept up in these raids and deported. And that is part of the reason why there are so many people upset tonight. Yeah, we also want to mention, too, out in the Inland Empire, there was a similar protest today against the Trump administration immigration policies with several hundred people there on Tyler and Magnolia. That was in Riverside, also taking to the streets with those signs, with those flags, even crossing intersections there. So we are seeing and have been focusing on kind of what's happening in downtown Los Angeles tonight, but across our area. Again, another peaceful demonstration happening today earlier also in Riverside to just protest these mass deportations that have now been carried out by the new administration. So on the left side of your screen, a live picture from the ground of the 101 freeway now flowing once again in both directions. On the right side of your screen is a live picture from Air 7. And it looks like a large bulk of that group that has gathered near where Tim Caputo has been reporting is breaking up and traveling east on Los Angeles Street, away from the 101 freeway. Again, we want to track where they're going and what they plan on doing. But Tim Caputo is live on the scene right now on Los Angeles Street. Tim.
Yeah, it seems like a coordinated effort for this group to move, not necessarily forced by LAPD themselves. We've noticed over the course of the afternoon as well, there have been a handful of leaders who have been very vocal in kind of getting the crowd to either move in that direction towards City Hall, which is around 3 o'clock this afternoon, and then another movement away from City Hall around 5:45. And just in the last, you mentioned it, Jory, 5 minutes or so, this large group now moving away from this intersection here at Arcadia Street and Los Angeles Street and moving down towards it's unknown where they're going at this point, but certainly the confrontation line, which was up against these LAPD officers, has kind of dissipated a little bit as they move farther away. We'll try to get a handle on exactly where they're going, but obviously moving farther from the 101 is good news, certainly for drivers as they've gotten on the freeway several times over the course of today. But at the moment, at least this intersection here, there seems to be obviously a handful of people hanging out, but the vast majority already moving down Los Angeles Street. There is a big kind of square around the corner here where some other protesters were gathering just around 6 o'clock, 6:15 tonight. They could be headed there as well. There were speakers there. They were kind of chants and cheering there as well. It was a much different feel than here, and that may be where they're headed, but certainly it seems like the de-escalation efforts here seem to be working as many of the folks are moving away.
Yeah, Tim, you've been covering this for us, and you have been speaking with people. That sometimes in live coverage can be a little bit dangerous because you don't know what people are going to get on live TV and say, or if they're going to be cussing or whatever. But you have been speaking with a lot of people out there today. What is their sentiment? What have they been telling you about why they wanted to come out, and even the energy in the crowd? What can you share?
So listen, there's a lot of folks here who are deeply impacted by these immigration policies, by these deportations from ICE, and just the way the Trump administration has gone about it. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern, and it's more than just personal. It's your family members, it's your cousins, it's your aunts, it's your grandparents. These are people that they're genuinely worried about out here. And a lot of them have said the same thing, as we want to be the voice for them. because some of them have been deported, some of them are under threat of being deported. They're not willing to come out here, so they want to be the voice of those people, their loved ones, their family members, their friends, and that's the reason that they came out here. Like I said, they're very passionate about this as well. They want to be known that they are not taking this lightly. They want their voices to be heard. Many of them understand that this may go nowhere when it comes to the Trump administration and Washington hearing their concerns. But there's also a sense of community that I've talked to a lot of people about here. People who said, listen, it's not just Mexican flags out here. There are a lot of countries and a lot of families of folks who are impacted by this, and together to see this crowd, to see how riled up and pumped up people are out here, makes them feel like there is a community and that there is purpose and impact in what they're doing out here. And I think that's why you're seeing such a, as I put it, lively crowd out here, because it's not just a policy that just happens in thin air. This is a policy that's happening to family. This is a policy that's happening to friend. I do want to get a look at more LAPD coming in here as well. Those sirens going as they bring more officers to this area. But I think that's the sentiment out here, and I think that's why it's very personal for a lot of folks, and that's why they definitely wanted to come out here to have their voices heard, to let the Trump administration know, to let the federal government know, to let the mayor's office, the governor's office, any elected official who could possibly help them know that they are out here, they want to be helped, and they have family members and friends and loved ones who need the help as well.
Yeah. We're watching right now, Tim, from up above. Some of those protesters have gone down Los Angeles Street, which as it travels to the east, curls around and spills out onto Alameda, right in front of Union Station, which is what you are looking at right now. Union Station is down at the bottom of your screens, those kind of dark roofs, and over to the right you can see the white tower of Union Station. Alameda is running left to right, and the 101 freeway is on the left there. So you can see Los Angeles Street goes, curls up and around to where that main gathering of protesters are, and now it is complete gridlock across Los Angeles. We have the Grammys going on a bit to the west and to the south, and a lot of pedestrians now walking down Alameda, some bicyclists and people, protesters in the roadway on Alameda. They can't get onto the 101. They're spilling now into the side streets and disrupting traffic there as well.
Yeah, so just an interesting situation playing out right now. And we did just see from that live image on the ground that Tim showed us of more LAPD officers moving in. So while he mentioned maybe there hasn't been an official dispersal order from those SWAT units that came in or tactical units that came in, maybe that is about to happen shortly. And that's why the additional officers and resources are being brought in. But again, great point that Jory highlighted a bit ago is that once these this crowd and these protesters, demonstrators are asked to disperse, where do they go from there? And then what impact does that have on traffic in the area? What impact does that have? Because we've seen it happen in the past. Maybe there is a dispersal here, and then 5 or 10 minutes later, you know, the group has popped up at another intersection, and then the protest just continues into the night. So certainly something that law enforcement has to figure out before they order this group or any group to disperse is what are the next steps that happen after that, and how can they kind of get ahead of that to make sure that everyone is safe, not only these protesters, but also the drivers who now have to, you know, keep an eye out to make sure they're not, you know, possibly hitting somebody. I mean, these individuals are walking, as you mentioned, just in the midst of traffic right now.
Yeah, I believe we've swung around. Is this still Alameda and Arcadia? If I can get some perspective, I see the 101 freeway is off to the right. Yeah, so there's the 101 freeway. So there is another entrance point onto the 101 freeway, a little down. Aliso becomes commercial, and there is an on and an off ramp there. If you go further on the other side, there's Viñas Street that they can pop off on. That's behind the courthouse, the bus depot, Union Station. So there are other entry and exit points from the 101 freeway. It's just a matter of what these people want to do, how motivated they are to continue this into the night. And it appears that they are continuing this into the night. We're back here at Los Angeles Street. I believe this is where we have been focusing. No, maybe not. So Los Angeles Street, this is Alameda. Okay, back at Alameda, and the protesters are continuing to move around this area. They've been shut out of Los Angeles Street, the overpass over the 101 freeway that is now up to the top of your screen. We're going to see that group gathered right there on the right side of the 101 freeway. That is where Tim Caputo is and watching this crowd, and it looks like this group is now moving. Breaking apart. Let's go back down to Tim if we can on the ground to see what is happening to that gathering there. Tim?
Yeah, I just noticed a couple things here. We had more police officers show up, including an officer with the bullhorn here who started to talk to the crowd. I did speak with an LAPD officer who confirms there has not been a dispersal order for this gathering at the moment, just the one that happened earlier when they were on the 101. So, no dispersal order yet, with the increased officers who have shown up to the scene and the bullhorn letting folks know to head in that direction. Again, fireworks have been going off. Don't worry about those noises. That's been going off for the last several hours. You see the man with the bullhorn coming out here as well, telling this crowd to move. And in fact, if you look in the crowd there, actually, you see a guy in a black shirt. These are one of the protesters and maybe even one of the organizers of the protest itself, because he has his own kind of bullhorn, and he's the one telling people move in this direction. This is something that we've kind of seen over the course of the day too, especially as the crowd has kind of shifted into different areas of downtown. You've had these kind of leaders of the protest getting people to move in a certain direction, and guess what, guys? They do exactly that. So in this instance, you're seeing right there this guy with the black shirt and shorts on telling people to move up the street. This is Arcadia Street. It runs along the 101. We're right at Los Angeles Street, where now CHP has joined LAPD here on the street itself to eventually try to get people to move out of here. They obviously have, I should say that's the Sheriff's Department now backing up LAPD, standing on Los Angeles Street here as the crowd now moving its way up Arcadia. You guys mentioned the traffic. Saying it's a mess is the understatement of the century. It has been a problem all day long, as many of these protesters have been not just on the 101, but many of these streets in downtown LA. And real quick, I want to show you in this direction as well. They've shut down Los Angeles Street and Aliso halfway up the street as well. So LAPD has come in to try to manage the traffic situation, which was a bit scary at times because cars were moving as protesters were moving physically on the street as well. They were moving slow, albeit, but they were moving around at the same time. Obviously now the group moving its way up the street, up Arcadia Street. Where they're headed is unknown, but as you guys mentioned, some were going down towards the train station, some were moving to this square about a block away. There doesn't seem to be a specific rhyme or reason, and because there are several thousand people with separate groups of hundreds of here, hundreds of people here, they may be just kind of going with the flow of the people as they're moving, so there might not be specific purpose to it, but obviously, at least when it comes to this intersection and this kind of tense back and forth that lasted easily 15, 20, 35 minutes here, this has dissipated at least for the moment. I'll step out of the frame, guys, here just as LAPD starts to move across the street. Okay, Tim, we'll take a look and see what these officers are doing now, whether they're just shutting down traffic or whether they're moving in now to make arrests. Anytime you see police in tactical gear with movement like that, they do have some intent, a specific purpose, and it's likely not good for anyone on the ground who is not supposed to be there. Are you able, we only have about 45 seconds left in this broadcast, but are you able to hear what the police are announcing on the ground, Tim? Are you still with us? Yeah, give me 1 second. Actually, he moved farther down, and because we found ourselves on the opposite side of police, I can't hear on the opposite side, but he's clearly getting them to move out of the street and off the sidewalk, is at least what I heard on this corner here, is you have to move, you have to move. Yeah, okay, we'll see how they proceed here, the police. Tim, thanks, great job in a, once again, difficult situation, so we appreciate your hard work there on the ground. We will continue to follow this situation. It's been going on for hours. All day began this morning. Protests continue in downtown Los Angeles. Yeah, we will continue to follow this evening and break in if necessary. This peaceful protest continuing tonight in downtown Los Angeles against the Trump administration's deportation policies.